My question, I think, is probably on the minds of a lot of Americans, and that is the partisan bickering in Washington. Probably a 20 or 30-second answer from each of you. How would you fix it if you were elected? How would you court me if I were in your congressional district as a delegate in response to that to obtain my vote?
The first thing I'd do would be talk about bigger questions. I mean, it's nice to argue about give this tax to this person, give this tax to this person, give this benefit to this person, take away Social Security, don't take it away. But what I talk to them about is say, look, let's increase the pie. Let's increase the money that's coming in. You'll still have your bickering, but we'll be bickering about big things. And we'll have enough money to balance the budget. And the way you increase the pie is quite obvious. You create energy independence. See, I look at, well, I guess I don't have any more time. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if you look at my track record, I'm somebody that builds coalitions, and I like to work with people. Now, that doesn't mean you compromise your principles that you have. I have certain set principles I follow, but we need to look to, say, President Ronald Reagan. He got some of his most sweeping legislation passed when he had a Democrat-controlled Senate and a Democrat-controlled House. Why? Because he could build coalitions. He could work with people. He could convince people to see his point of view. Now, I realize that when I go back to Congress, I'll be one of 435 people. I'm not going to get anything done unless I can work with people and build coalitions. And if you look at the track record that I've established in the state legislature, I have worked with people of both sides of the aisle. I think if you'd go and ask just about any Democrat on the House side who's one of the best Republicans to work with as far as working together and hearing different points of view, I think they'd say, it was me. And I can get people to see my point of view. I consider them my friends. And unless we can work together and give and take a little bit on certain issues without compromising your core principles, that's how you're going to get something done in the United States Congress. Because one person, stomping their feet and pounding their fist is not going to get anything done unless you can work with people. And I have a track record of doing that, and that's what I can do.
No, I actually give Steve a hard time because he's actually right. He's been very good in the legislature at building coalitions and doing the things, moving forward an agenda, bringing people together. I have the same experience in being able to do that. Now, here's the thing that's very important. People think that if you're working and willing to work with each other and willing to work across the aisle, willing to work with other people with different ideologies, that you're compromising principle. I am a principle-based politician. I believe in core principles, and I'm not willing to compromise those principles. But, I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem in Washington, D.C. is we have a bunch of people back there acting like children. They're throwing rocks at each other for no reason. They're needlessly insulting one another. They're needlessly inflaming the argument rather than actually talking like adults, working together to find the solutions for today's biggest problems. What I will bring to the table is someone who can talk to you like an adult, someone who may disagree with you, but at least we can have a dialogue and say, okay, here's why I disagree with you, why do you disagree with me? And let's work on finding common ground on issues without compromising principle and without asking you to compromise your principles. We can work to come up with solutions if we simply stop throwing rocks and act like adults.
I think you hit your question is a huge issue because that's, I think, one of the big problems in D.C. And I agree, you have to be able to work with people. But let me tell you how, because it's easy to say, well, work with people. But let me give you some examples. I think everyone up here will agree that we want to cut things, and one of the things we want to cut is programs in the Department of Education, things like that. Well, if you look at that and say, well, how do we get that done? You can go in with three very good arguments. You can come in and say, we got to cut because it's unconstitutional. The federal government shouldn't be doing that. You can also say, you can come in and say, well, we got to cut because it's just not being administered right. It's not effective, right? Or you can come in and say, look, we got to cut because we just can't afford it anymore, right? Those are three equally valid arguments. The way you stop the partisanship back there is you use the argument that works on your audience, that who you're dealing with at the time. And that's the way I was trained. You get the winning arguments. And so, for example, now I think right now there's a lot of common ground when you talk about economy. And we can't afford things. Let's look for solutions. Let's look about how we can move those things to the states. I think if you go in and argue right away it's unconstitutional, even though that might be true, it adds to the gridlock. So I think you have to understand who you're dealing with, who you're talking to, who you need to persuade, and use arguments that work on those people that aren't polarizing. right, that will not divide people, but actually bring people together. Because we have a lot of quivers, arrows in our quiver that we can use, but we got to be smarter how we use them. And so that would be my approach.